Hello, welcome to the Fiber for the People studio. My name is Tayler Earl and I am the owner and dyer of Fiber for the People yarn. I am coming at you today with a video. It's a tips from the dye studio video, but I'm not talking about dyeing yarn today. I'm actually just talking about working with hand dyed yarn, especially in terms of pairing mohair with other base yarns. There's so many really beautiful designs right now that incorporate mohair in the design with a fingering or a sport weight base yarn. I want to talk about that today because I've come to learn in my experience both as a knitter and as a dyer that a lot of times what we think we're going to get when we pair X mohair with Y base color may not actually end up being what we achieve, and that, when it comes to making an investment in a sweater's worth of yarn, can be disappointing at best. And so I really want to talk a little bit about what I've come to learn about pairing mohair with other base yarns. Okay, this all stems from an email correspondence I had with a customer who was inquiring about a colorway that she wanted to use in the sweater, and she was also trying to find a mohair to pair it with so that she could ensure that the base color, not the mohair, the base colorway would shine. She wanted that beautiful variegated base colorway to really shine through the mohair. And so she was hoping that by pairing that base colorway with mohair, she was going to emphasize that base colorway or accentuate that or enhance that base colorway. And this got my mind thinking, because the last thing I would want personally, and I would want my customers to experience, is disappointment in their finished garment after they've invested so much money in a sweater quantity. I know the yarn is not cheap, it's not inexpensive, and we want to make sure we're getting what we want when we make that kind of an investment. So I thought about this and I felt that if the person's goal was to allow that variegated colorway to shine through, they wanted that to be the star player in the fabric, then it would have been a mistake to make that the base yarn. The mistake would have been to choose that beautiful variegated color as the fingering weight yarn and to put a solid mohair on top of it. And that was what the question was as well, is which solid colorway in mohair would be best suited to be paired with the base colorway that would allow that base colorway to shine. So when I'm thinking about this and wanting to provide this customer with the most clear and accurate information as possible, I found myself kind of in a quandary, thinking, well, there's really no way to do that if you are planning on putting mohair on top of that variegated colorway, because anytime you do that, and this is from my own experience, anytime you do that, you are not going to be emphasizing the variegated colorway, you're going to be de-emphasizing the variegated colorway in lieu of adding texture and halo to your fabric. Now, if what you want to do is take a variegated colorway, mute it down, add softness and a halo, then pairing it with a solid mohair is exactly what you want to do. So perhaps you have a colorway, a sweater's quantity of, or it doesn't even matter, just if you have a yarn in your stash that is just far too busy for your taste, or even just for the project that you plan on using it for. It's just too busy, it's too vibrant, it's too variegated, the colors are too bright. Then adding mohair to that is an excellent way to mute the colors down, soften the edges a little bit, and give yourself something much more subtle to work with. That's what mohair is great at. It works as kind of a natural blending agent for the colors in the variegated base yarn. However, if you want the variegated base yarn color, or if you just want that variegated colorway to still shine through, but you also require the halo and the texture of a paired mohair, there's something else that you need to do, and it typically is not the first thing that we think of when we're pairing mohair. Now, what I want to show you first is an example of a base colorway on fingering weight yarn topped with solid mohair colors, and in one case Suri. So I have here, this is a new colorway that I have in the shop. It's called Titanium, and it's very heavily variegated. The variegation in this is so stark. You're getting quite a contrast between colors that if you were to add a solid mohair on top of that, what would be happening is you would be dulling the edges of the colors, you would be softening the variegation, and kind of blending the overall look of the fabric. So here is a swatch of titanium. Beautiful variegation happening in there. You can definitely see the differences in color, a nice even distribution of color. It's really pretty, and I apologize, I'm outside with most of my lighting coming from over there. So there it is, that's titanium. Really, really beautiful. Now, this customer wanted to ensure that this colorway was the star player, that it were to shine through, asking for a complimentary solid to go with that. So I got to swatching so that I could provide this person with a photo of the swatches with a couple different mohair colorways paired so that they could see what would happen when you paired it with a solid color. And this is what I came up with. I paired titanium with what I just showed you with 4 different solids. One of them is a Suri silk lace weight, not mohair. I don't have that cake with me, but it's okay because I'll just show you what it looks like in a swatch. So here are the mohairs that I used to pair with the titanium colorway. All of them are solid. I chose one soft, one medium, and then one much more vibrant here, plus this purple Suri that I'm going to show you. Here is the swatch with those different colors. I think the sun is about to go behind a cloud, so it might light or darken a little bit. Okay, so this first section of the swatch, this one right up here at the top, I'm going to give you a comparison. Here is the actual swatch, and then this is the mohair pairing. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it like this. There. By adding a light pink mohair right here to this fabric, you're muting down the fabric, giving it a beautiful halo, but you're definitely muting down the vibrancy that you see in this fabric here. If I get a little closer, you can really see that most of what you're seeing here is a really soft pink with a little bit of multicolor kind of undertones, essentially. But overall, the effect is very muted. You lose a little bit of the vibrancy of the colorway that you would have otherwise. So you can kind of see the comparison here. So that's what would happen if I paired this colorway with a light mohair. Now, this next spot, this is Suri. This next section right here, I'm pairing it with Suri, and it's kind of a purple Suri. And you can see now it's a very similar muting of the color, except now I have a little bit more of a bright purple undertone to the overall color. But the overall color that you would see here is somewhat lost behind the halo of the Suri. Now if I continue down my swatch, now I'm adding a garnet red mohair. And again, here is the main colorway. And then we have the final section of the swatch, which is kind of a chartreusey moss mohair added to this colorway. And you can see that now you're getting, you know, it's actually interesting because I feel like this section of the swatch almost reveals the variegated colorway more than the others, but yet it's toning down and completely muting the vibrancy of the color in the base yarn. So this vibrancy and variegation that you have here in the colorway is being muted and toned down completely by that mohair. So that's interesting because initially when I first thought about pairing mohair with colorways, you kind of get this idea in your head that it's going to enhance the base yarn, that it's going to in some way work harmoniously with that base yarn. One is not going to overpower the other. And I just don't think that when you take a heavily variegated base yarn and pair it with a solid mohair, I just don't think that that's the case. Now, this is not, I'm not making a case against pairing the same colorway here in mohair with the same colorway in a base yarn. If you had this colorway in mohair paired with this colorway as a base yarn, that's a whole different ball game. Of course, that would be beautiful, and I feel like you would have an equal distribution like equal emphasis on both, because they're both using the same colors, because they're both, you know, variegated in the same way. One is going to complement the other, absolutely. So if that's the case, if you're matching your mohair, your variegated mohair to your variegated base yarn, by all means, it's a... While I was getting handsy, I just dropped my swatch into some water. No big deal. The show must go on. You can still see very clearly what's going on here. But I have some yarn soaking down there, and the swatch just dove right in. Okay, but what I'm saying is that if that's your choice, if your choice is to pair a variegated color base yarn with the same variegated color in mohair, yeah, absolutely, that's gorgeous. That's an easy yes for me. But when it comes to taking a variegated colorway like this and pairing it with a solid mohair, I think honestly, that's like a hard no for me. And for me personally, not like, no, you shouldn't do this. Like, you do what you want, you know, live your best life. But for me, the time and money, the time that goes into designing a yarn like this and to creating a yarn like this, but the money that goes into purchasing a yarn like this, I mean, it's not worth covering it all up with a mohair that's essentially just going to mute it down. So, I mean, if I'm being brutally honest, that's my opinion about that. So here's my alternative. My suggestion is to avoid pairing solid mohair with heavily variegated yarn unless your intention is to mute down a colorway that you just think is too busy, too vibrant, too something for your taste. Use the solid mohair as like a natural blending tool for those colors. Really, really great way to kind of remedy a troublesome colorway, something that you just can't figure out how to use. That's where you really want to grab some really pretty mohair to pair it with, just to bring it back down a little bit. Okay, but let's say you really do, you have a project that you want to do that is employing mohair pairing, and you don't want to pair same color mohair and base yarn. You want to have a solid in there. You want to have a variegated colorway in there. You want them to work together, one not overpowering the other. My alternative, my suggestion to you is to choose a solid base yarn and top it with a beautiful variegated mohair. You would be surprised at the result. So I have here my example. This is my No Frills Sweater by PetiteKnit. I'm knitting this sweater using a solid base yarn in the Sapphire colorway with a heavily variegated mohair topper or mohair pair in the Angel Rust colorway. So this is what they look like together, independent from one another. So we have, and I'm going to turn sideways so the light catches. So here's the Sapphire, a deep, deep, deep navy teal almost. Really beautiful. It is not a solid colorway. It's got variegation in there, but for all intents and purposes, I like to say from a galloping horse, it's a solid. And I'm pairing this with Angel Rust in the mohair. So that's heavily variegated yarn. So lots of really rich variegation happening in here. So these two paired together, this is what we have. Now I feel like if I had chosen this colorway as my base yarn and this dark colorway as my mohair, had I done that, I would be completely muting down this beautiful, heavily variegated colorway here, and that would have been a shame. Because this is so beautiful and you really want this to shine through. So I want this variegated colorway to shine through. I want this to give me some really beautiful toning, but I don't want them to battle with each other. I really want them to work together. So let me show you the result. Here is the resulting fabric. Now what's really amazing about this is that you get that beautiful variegation. You get that beautiful tinting, that variegated color that you see in there. That is the star player. That's what catches your eye and makes this a really interesting overall fabric. So I say, if you want a variegated color and you want a solid color and you want there to be a mohair pairing, you want your variegated colorway to be your mohair. You want that to stand out and be what kind of dictates the look of the fabric. So my suggestion to you, and I'll actually pop a picture up of my sweater so you can get a really good look at how it looks overall in better lighting than where I'm at right now. But I suggest to you that if you are going to be investing in a sweater quantity, you are pairing mohair with a solid colorway base yarn, or you have an interest in doing that, decide which part of that you want to stand out. And if you want that variegated colorway to be the star player, definitely consider going with a solid base yarn and a beautiful variegated mohair. So I hope that helps provide a little bit of insight into what you're getting into when you're pairing mohair with other base yarns, whether they are variegated or solid. Mohair has a big impact on that base yarn and on the overall look of your fabric. So think about these things before you make those investments in your sweater quantities of yarn, whether it be from Fiber for the People or anyone else. It is my pleasure to offer these insights to you, so thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me while we chat about this. If you like what you see here on the Fiber for the People Presents YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell icon so you can be notified of anything new that pops up on the channel. Don't forget to like the video, and also you can find Fiber for the People on Instagram at fiber.for.the.people. Head over there, follow, so you can stay in the loop about all things Fiber for the People. Thank you guys, have a great day, happy knitting, happy crochet, happy whatever it is that you're doing, and I will see you guys in the next video.